The girl for all seasons. She was chameleon. This girl Reno, a beautiful somewhat buxom girl, golden complexion, sharp features, seductive figure. She was pressing my feet then massaging my head one night when I told her how many things you can do, that too, expertly Reno? She just smiled as she left my room saying, I can do anything and everything, my service is multi-purpose, if you need anything, any assistance, any work, I am your willing servant. It was few days back that my mother had hired her as domestic hand and she could work 16 hours a day, hard labor and simpler work, yet had a good sleep and health. Reno was a buxom beauty endowed with extra padding of flesh in the right regions. With golden complexion and jet black hair with a tint of blue in her eyes, she had a little limp, but this limp made her walk with a seductive swing as if she was walking on a ramp in a fashion parade. She was very poor and very pretty. Her father had died when she was hardly 10 and her mother brought her and her little sister 3 years younger by doing all sorts of domestic work, cleaning, cooking, even stitching and massaging. Now she was not well and suffered from asthma, and her daughter, Shanu, was in school in 10th standard, and thus Reno had to discontinue her schooling and be busy in working and earning, as she needed money to maintain her family, her mother and sister, and of course herself. As well as she was collecting money for her dowry when it was needed, but she had no plans of marriage as she had responsibility. Sometimes it appeared she hated men and even the prospect of matrimony. There might be some deep wounding experience to warrant such an attitude, and though she was very attractive and lively and even seductive, no man, whether her employer or anybody on the streets, boys and hooligans and citizens in that mean and poor street, dare to make any advance, verbal or otherwise, to trap her or approach her for love or even worse. It was well known, and perhaps she was responsible for spreading the story, that when she was working in bachelor's den and when they tried to take advantage of her, she delivered a few punches on their heads saying, I am a cobbler's daughter and I know how to deal with skin and flesh, and that gentleman had to nurse his pain and inflammation for about a week. But more important in her persona was that she was a multi-purpose assistant, skilled to a reasonable extent in almost anything and everything. She told me once, I can do anything except one. And she didn't want to define that one exception except with meaningful smile. I was working in a governmental setup and not yet married, and I was in no hurry to do it. I was staying in nearby flat with my mother. My brothers and sisters were all married or studying in cities different than our own. My mother initially hired her part-time services as a cleaner, cleaning utensils, clothes, floors, dusting of everything prone to collect dust. All these items of work she did very fast and with a skill which was amazing. Once she even tried to dust off something on my face or arms, and when I protested she ran away hastily, warning me to be clean if I wanted to avoid her dusting operation on my person. She was working for about 16 hours in 10 households, earning reasonably well, which was necessary for her family, including medication of her mother and education of her sister, and then of course accumulating sizable and impressive dowry, which will attract a respectable suitor. When she had some spare time, she cooked some special delicacies for me and my mother was so impressed that she added cooking to her work, and of course to massage my mother when she needed, and once she did massaging operation on my feet and head when I complained to my mother of some pain and tension. It appeared that she had taken some special training in effective massage to release tension, muscular or otherwise, but her massage was strictly functional with no mischievous, romantic, or erotic touch or possibility. She was Puritan and moralist with impeccable character. She had even learned some martial arts, keeping up a small knife ready in her pockets which she could use in case of any aggressive male predator, her employer, or otherwise. She once said, I have to earn money by honest work and earn lots of money. Otherwise a poor and pretty girl like me is an invitation to male exploiters and molesters or worse. She had developed this attitude, as I came to know later, due to traumatic experience, when she was barely 12, of being molested and sexually abused by her uncle in her neighborhood, when her mother and sister were away in work and school. She couldn't teach a lesson to the man molester as she was too young and tender, but later she developed a masculine skill and power to defend herself and teach a lesson to any aggressive person. She also learned how to wield a knife in extreme cases. Once when I was sick, she played the role of a nurse throughout a week, which forced me to lie on bed with high fever, perhaps due to malaria. My doctors were unable to diagnose accurately my sickness, but her nursing was remarkable with a maternal touch. In fact, she used to nurse many persons or children in neighborhood if need arose. Of course, she was a nurse to her mother who was ailing with asthma and couple of other diseases. Her education was very rudimentary. She couldn't go beyond 8th or 9th due to exigencies of work and necessity to earn money for herself and her family, but surprisingly in her spare time she completed the curriculum up to 10th standard and did it quite well. Though she didn't think it was of much use to have a degree certified by a board of 10th or 12th. She was good at maths and surprisingly even at English, which she could read and write and speak effectively, though with her own personalized accent. Because of her skill and informal education without certification but with equality, I asked her to work as my secretary when I worked from home, and she handled my telephone marketing or otherwise, and she did a good job. But she could not get job of secretary as she had no certification, and secondly she knew that secretaries are likely to be misused by males and officers she had to serve. She could sing well. I often heard her humming while doing her work, and once I requested her to sing a song and she did a good job singing a love song, and she did it with feeling, though she commented at the end that love was not her cup of tea. Here I must admit I was developing a friendly feeling faintly resembling what is called loving interest in her, but I was afraid to go further as I feared her retaliation, as she made it known that she hated men and even marriage, love, and romance or going to bed with a man was unthinkable. Once something drastic and painful had happened to her, and this shaped her adverse attitude to man, love and sex. She had accumulated her savings in cash and kept it in a little box in a small hutment-like apartment in a chawl, poor men residential quarters as is known in Bombay. She was in hospital to take care of her mother who had fallen sick and needed hospitalization for a day or two. Her sister was in school, and some miscreants and hooligans took this opportunity to rob her of her painfully accumulated savings. She was heartbroken, and for the first time she cried before me for help, otherwise she herself was confident of handling any situation howsoever difficult. I knew the police inspector and SP of the area and got the hooligans and thieves arrested and her money recovered and returned to her. She was of course very grateful to me for this act, and she developed a feeling of respect, gratitude, and perhaps some softness for me after this event. After a week or so, when the hooligans were released after returning stolen booty, they were out for vengeance against me. When I was returning home after parking my car in a garage at night, I was caught by a couple of knife-wielding hooligans, who had stolen Reno's savings. I didn't know martial arts and I was not armed with anything, except my arms, and I was even terrified by such exigency, which was totally unexpected. Somehow Reno could see my predicament from a chink of a window in my flat on the 5th floor, ran down and did a tremendous job of using her martial arts, including her little knife, in rescuing me from this distressing condition. The hooligans in the bargain did suffer some blows and cuts. Reno was hurt a bit, and I took her in my car to a hospital for proper bandaging and did a bit of nursing, reciprocating hers on the occasion when I was sick. She was working in several households, though our household was the major one, and she had taken most of the work noted earlier. We had to change our flat to a better and costlier area, which was not easily accessible by Reno with conveniences we had to part company. I was not very happy about it. When my mother was out, she came to my room at night. I was reading a book. She addressed me with some stammer, "You know, sir, I can do everything except one." She paused for a few seconds with a faint smile, flickering on her lips with a bit of mischief as well as tenderness. She took my hand and then my face in her hands and said, "I can do almost anything, as you know, with one exception, and for you I am ready to waive even that exception." She leaned over me and kissed me. I of course returned the kiss. Very soon, with mother's blessing, we got married in spite of all the difference in caste, class, and education. It is well known that love respects no boundaries and barriers, and thus Reno became my companion, the same Reno who could do almost everything except one, to express and receive love, and she made an exception only for me.